Out-of-body experience, or OBE, is one of the hotly debated subjects along with the sleep paralysis, whether it represents neurological or paranormal phenomenon. While the scientific explanation seems to be gaining more weight, as there have been various researches that proved OBE can be intentionally induced, but just as with sleep paralysis, the scientific rationale of its mechanism don't always explain the complex and vivid descriptions of each individual out-of-body experience. It gets even more interesting when these experiences seem to corroborate the perceived notion of the spiritual world or the underworld. As you will find from today's stories, there are definitely shared images and themes among these different individual experiences. Here are 3 allegedly true stories about out-of-body experience from Korea. As always, handpicked, translated, and narrated by your host, Anthony. My dad would tell me he was born with a spiritual sensitivity. For one, he often had dreams that predicted the future already from his childhood. Death of a random stranger, to a famous boxer, to a national disaster of a sinking ferry boat. He was once even given the winning numbers of a lottery from a dream, only to see it coming true after he gave up on it after many years of buying weekly tickets in vain. He saw his gift more as a curse. Not only could not do anything about the impending death his dreams predicted, but also all the terrible scenes of death and blood, even from the dreams, have traumatized him to this day. Even the winning lottery number has in the end made him feel more distressed than anything else for the sense of relative deprivation. Yet all those were just a prelude to what was to come. In 1997, Dad was 37 and was working as a builder. His day started very early, and one day he was loading up his car for work as usual. Out of blue, he felt undescribable sense of foreboding. He almost called a sick day, but since he already loaded the tools in the car, and it would have meant an unpaid sick leave, he went to work after all. That day, he was hit in the head by a heavy load carried away on a crane and fell 10 meters to the ground. Subsequently, he spent the next decade in hospital. While he was at the intensive care unit, his limbs were paralyzed and could hardly speak. Totally bedridden, he would go in and out of consciousness during the day, but strangely at night, he could not sleep a blink. After days of insomnia, he started to get out-of-body experience when the clock hit 2 a.m. His spirit would float off from the body and fly freely over the town. After flying over the cityscape full of cars running along the motorway and the maze of tall buildings and houses, he would land somewhere foggy. As he wandered around in the fog as if to look for somebody, he began to see one by one other people. They were walking, sometimes by oneself, or hand in hand together with the children. The number of the crowd increased as my dad joining the flow of people, all going in the same direction. He would try to approach some of them to ask where they were going, but none would acknowledge and just carried on their way. Dad soon realized that these people lacked the pupils in their eyes and thus could not see him in the eyes. Otherwise, their appearance and attire looked just as normal. They were all walking in one direction. Some with nothing, some carrying a small bundle, and others with a huge backpack. Some of them would make a break when reaching a stream and open their bundle or bag, and inside of them were always food. They would never share their food with others other than their own companions, meaning those with an empty hand could not but just carry on walking. At the end of about 2 hours of such a march, fog would disperse, and they would reach a vast field of flowers full of bright light. These flowers Dad had never seen in real life, and shined unearthly colors of rainbow. Dad would feel intoxicated by all the beauty around him and would jump and roll around the field, while the others would just push on with their journey. The field of flowers would also continue about 2 hours, but at a certain point my dad would feel he should not carry on further. Then the view of the field would start to fade, and he would find himself back floating over the town. He would then fly back to his hospital ward and his bed, and then he would wake up. Such nightly journey or vision continued every day for 2 years. Whenever he reached the field of flowers, he said, he never wanted to come back to the hospital. When as a spirit he could fly and move freely, he dreaded to go back to his crippled body. One day, the nurse who were on the night shift asked Dad, "Why do you never sleep at night? Every time I see you, you're just looking in the air and not answering my questions." My dad, of course, dared not to explain about the out-of-body experience, and just mumbled that he might be suffering paralysis at nights. After those 2 years, my dad finally started to recover, regaining strength in the limbs. When I was a child, my parents ran a little shop with a flat attached to it at the back. It was a one-room flat, and I had to sleep at my parents' side. It wasn't ideal, but I was young and got accustomed to the arrangement. Except, I would wake up in the middle of the night occasionally because of my dad's loud snore. One day I was once woken up because of Dad's snoring. As I sometimes had done already before, I tried to stop him snoring by pinching his nose, but my fingers wouldn't catch on his nose. I tried several times more, but my hands kept just passing through his face. Confused, I looked around and saw myself still lying down. I'm here, and why am I still there? At first I thought I was dead, but upon closer inspection, my body was still breathing. I think I spent a good 10 minutes pondering what was happening before I finally realized it might be so-called out-of-body experience. I remembered from stories I had heard an out-of-body spirit could fly around freely. I got excited and went out. But for some reason, I found I could not go much further away from home, probably not much more than 50 meters. No matter how hard I tried, further than that, and I felt something was pulling me back. So I could not but wander in front of my parents' shop. To my surprise, there were still quite a lot of people on the street. The shop was in the residential area and would be usually very quiet so late at night. Only then I started noticing none of the women were carrying anything, and so didn't the guys. They were all expressionless. It was a weird scene to behold. I wondered if all these people were wandering ghosts. Maybe I could see them now because I was a spirit myself. They all seemed heading towards one direction, and none paid any attention to me except for one guy who frowned at me. I wanted to venture further and try to visit a friend next door, or the girl upstairs whom I then fancied. But all failed again, as if blocked by an invisible force. I got bored and sat on the bench in front of the shop. Then I suddenly felt chills. I turned around and saw something coming over slowly from a distance. I could see a bit more detail as it approached closer. It was almost 2 meters tall. Its black hair was long enough to cover the ground. Nails too were so long that they were twisted in all angles. The skin was wrinkly and deformed like that of a burn victim. The loose white gown he was wearing had black stains here and there. When I finally got to see its face, there were no eyes but nose and mouth, which was endlessly muttering something. Among all the other quiet and expressionless people, its presence stood out. I just kept looking at it thinking, "What's that crazy woman?" Suddenly, it stopped. I could feel that it was looking right at me with its eyeless stare. My survival instinct started to kick in. It smiled creepily and started to run straight at me. I didn't know why, but I felt I had to run if I wanted to survive. Maybe because I was a spirit, it didn't take a second till I could run back at home and dive into my body. I woke up in my body, my heart pounding hard. I could hear the glass front door of the shop rattling loudly, as if somebody was pushing at its knob back and forth. It must have lasted 10 minutes or so. To me it felt like forever. I flung my duvet over me and shivered, which woke up my mom. "What are you doing?" "A ghost is trying to catch me." "I'm here, don't worry." I snuggled in her arms and only then could calm down enough to fall asleep again. I wonder if I could get farther away from home and then had encountered that thing. Would I be still alive? Corporal Kim was on the night watch duty with his assistant gunner, Private Park. Once settled down at their designated checkpoint, Kim told Private Park that he'd doze off a while and he should wake him up if anybody approached. A while later, Kim got up to check what time it was, only to realize his body was still there behind him, perched against the wall and asleep. Kim was surprised, but soon concluded that this should be what he heard as out-of-body experience. He got excited. A spirit should be able to go anywhere, and that meant he could sneak out of the military base too. Soon he was flying over the gate out of the base. The gatekeepers didn't seem to notice him at all. How fantastic, he thought to himself. Just as he was about to fly over to townwards, he saw something odd. A woman was approaching towards, swaying side to side awkwardly, with her long black hair hanging over her face. Feeling instantly alarmed, Kim stood aside. That might be what people call a ghost. The woman carried on past Kim and towards the military base. As Kim sighed of relief, the woman suddenly lifted her head and turned to Kim. "Oh shit!" Kim swore despite of himself. The woman was shedding bloody tears, and the half of her face was sunken in as if from a blunt trauma. But the scariest of all was that she was still smiling in that horrible state. Kim started to back away. The woman was still looking right at him and said, I'll take it first, then. Then she started to run over to the gate of the base. Kim was relieved that she was gone, until he figured out what she meant by "I'll take it first, then." She meant his empty body Kim left behind. He started to run following her, but the woman was well ahead. The moment he saw the woman entering the checkpoint, his mind started going hazy. Corporal Kim? Realizing he was back, Kim stood right up standing. Confused by the dazed look of Kim, Private Park explained that their time was up and the next watches were approaching. Kim hugged Park. "Oh, thank God you saved me! Thank you, thank you!" Suddenly the door to the checkpoint flung open. Two soldiers looked at the entrance, surprised. But there was nobody there, and not even a gust of wind. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for your listening. Out-of-body experience is not quite as common as sleep paralysis, but apparently not entirely uncommon either. I come across quite a few of them during my research, but most of them are definitely benign kind of just floating above your sleeping body and getting to look around the room or hear what the other people in the same room were saying. Not so unlike the induced OBE for scientific research. But today's stories are certainly much more dynamic and colorful and beyond simple rationalization, I think. I find the first story especially amusing, for it very much meets the widely accepted imageries of the underworld in Korean culture. I hope you enjoyed them as much as I did. If you'd like, please give my videos a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. It really helps my little channel grow. Until the next, stay safe and take care.